This is High Agency, a show for owners of accounting and financial planning businesses who want more clarity, more courage, and a better life. Most business owners don't lack effort. They lack commercial insight, the kind that lets you finally see the decisions that have often been available to you for years. Today, we're talking about commercial insight. Commercial insight isn't data and it's not a dashboard. It's often the moment something clicks, when you suddenly see an elegant, sometimes obvious solution you somehow didn't see for years. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And from that point, your decisions get much better. Your business gets lighter and time collapses because what could have taken 4 years now can be done by next quarter. Many of the major transformations I've ever seen in an accounting or financial advice business come back to a often single moment of commercial insight. So I'm going to show you what I mean with a few examples today. And the first is maybe not one that you would consider, but in 2019, Taylor Swift, who was a billion-dollar brand at the time, she herself in 2019 was worth about $300 million personally, but her brand was obviously billions of dollars. She had the most elite entertainment legal team, the best advisors in the world, and she found out that her first 6 albums had been sold without her consent to Scooter Braun. So her team hustled really, really hard to get an offer to Scooter to buy back those masters. The initial offers were in the $100 million. They then made an offer of $300 million, which he declined. They then went about spending their time getting funding and setting up complex structures to try and buy back these masters of her first 6 albums. Then Kelly Clarkson tweeted, "Why don't you just re-record the songs?" Elegant, obvious, but it was only after someone said it and after someone who was outside the bubble. Taylor Swift re-recorded every song of every album, and she re-released them as Taylor's album. People bought the albums again because they were Taylor's versions. Now, super recently, she has actually acquired the original masters as well for a really very low price. And obviously since 2019 and since re-recording those first 6 albums, she's gone from being worth personally about $300 million to about $2.5 billion US. And part of that rise was not worrying about buying those masters and getting funding to give Scooter Braun $300 million, just re-recording those albums. So that's kind of a moment of commercial insight from out of our world. I think sometimes we're all too close to our own businesses, and sometimes the problem isn't the problem. We see that quite a lot in the work that we do. That is actually just a symptom of an underlying problem. And sometimes you need someone outside of your business and outside of your bubble to just say the sentence that rearranges everything. This actually happens to me fairly often in my own business. So I know exactly that feeling where you go, now that you've said it, I'm aware how obvious that is, but I have battled this issue for 3 years. So I'm part of this issue as well. Next is one of my favorite examples of commercial insight collapsing time, and it is a client that we work with. So here are the numbers. $2.6 million accounting firm with 1 owner, 16 team members, and they've been going for just over 20 years and working really, really hard. EBITDA of this business is 4.8%. So that is on top of his commercial salary, $125,000 after that standard salary of profit. Now, we look at those numbers and think, Houston, we have a problem. But this firm has been running those numbers, running at a sub 10% margin for pretty much ever. So it's not an urgent problem. It is a structural problem. And we like to do some digging to go, what's going on here? So if you just look at the surface level numbers, it actually looks pretty fine, almost more than fine. So they have 276 clients. So the average spend per client is $9,400. For a suburban accounting firm, nothing glaringly wrong there. But that's data, not insight, right? So it needs to be interrogated, questioned, and broken apart and understood in context. So the coach in this situation said, hey, can you break up the revenue in any kind of meaningful way? And the client said, no, it's just all compliance revenue, all accounting revenue. Like we don't have different divisions. It's just all accounting revenue. And the coach said, yeah, but can you break it up by industry, by age, by length of client? Can you break it up? Just give me a list of the smallest payer to the top payer. Because when we do that, the patterns are going to emerge. So just let's have a play around with how this revenue can be broken up. And when they did, we noticed that you could just draw a line at some point in this client base. And so the line was actually drawn, I don't know why, but 106 clients. So 106 clients had an average spend per client of $21,800. So the total revenue for 106 clients was $2.31 million. The 170 clients below that line, total revenue for those 176 clients was $280,000, or an average spend of 1.7K per client. There it was, plain as day, commercial insight. And let me show you what transpired in terms of decision making once that line was drawn. So top line data never revealed this. The averages basically hid that truth. And for 20 years, the owner just worked harder and harder inside a model that could probably never deliver better results because he was resourcing unprofitable clients. And so the coach said, no need to take any action, but I would like to spend some time thinking about, if we only had those 106 clients, what would the org chart look like? What would the org chart to service those 106 clients versus your total client base of 276? So we don't want to use anyone's name in this hypothetical org chart. We don't want to say, well, this person's staying and this person's going, because we actually don't want the emotions to come into these decisions. Just roles. What roles would you need to service $2.31 million of revenue, 106 clients, and an average spend per client of $21,800? And then they built the org chart for that business, and then they built the budget for that business. And we haven't made any decisions at this point. We're just in the hypothetical. If we only had these 106 clients, what would the team to service them look like, and what would the budget of that business be? So before 276 clients, $2.6 million, 4.8% margin, 16 headcount. The hypothetical 106 client business, or what actually happened, which is they sold the tail, 106 clients, $2.31 million of revenue, 26% margin, 11.6 headcount, which actually allows for some growth. So there is some capacity sitting in there. And once we reprice, because we haven't even talked about the underpricing in this business, once we reprice those 106 clients, the margin is sustainably over 40%. This owner ran a business sub 10% EBITDA for 20 years and worked really hard. And that one moment of commercial insight and the one decision to sell that tail, his profit trajectory has changed forever. I would argue so has his life and the life of the people in his family. So commercial insight can collapse time. There's another story I'd like to tell you. It comes from one of our coaches who has a saying, like, never waste a crisis. And often a crisis is that voice from outside your bubble. There is a crisis. You no longer have a choice. Something now needs to change. And in order to make necessary changes, you need to interrogate the data. So crises often give insight. But what can be annoying is that that insight was already available to you if you went and looked for it earlier. It just becomes impossible to ignore because you have to take action. So I'm going to give you two real examples of a crisis. There's a financial planning firm that we worked with, and when we met them, the owner was working 70 hours a week. And there's 3 advisors, including him. They were producing $1.2 million of revenue. And the margin was consistently in the teens, sort of 17% margin after his salary. So from the outside, it looked quite stable, but it was actually kind of this slow motion crisis because they had been working, certainly 2 of the 3 advisors had been working 70-hour weeks for a really long time, and they were spent. They didn't engage us to fix their financial performance. They engaged us to get their life back. So we actually did work with basically 2/3 of this business and streamlined that advice factory, redesigned roles, improved systems, and got the owner and the other advisor back for 35 to 40-hour weeks. But there was this third advisor that we hadn't spent a lot of time with, who was across a risk book, so a risk-only advisor who actually sat separate to the business. And so we'd done this work and got the 2 advisors back to a sustainable working level. And then there was this risk advisor who looked after $400,000 worth of premiums. And she resigned. And the immediate reaction of the owner was, oh my gosh, this is a crisis. We have to replace her. How are we going to find a risk advisor at short notice? This is a crisis. But here's the thing. Instead of jumping to replace this person, we decided to pause and just ask, what if we had to service this book with just the 2 remaining advisors? So now the factory is actually fixed. We know how to standardize processes. We are no longer over-engineering and over-servicing every client. It was one of the biggest problems they had. And so we looked at what would it look like if the 2 of you actually just looked after this $400,000. And they were astonished at how much over-engineering and how much over-servicing was part of this 400K book. And so the result was that they did take that on between the 2 of them. They still work 35 hours a week each. So this business has gone from 3 advisors at $1.2 million in revenue and a 17% margin to 2 advisors at $1.46 million of revenue at a 35% margin. And both advisors are working fewer hours. Nothing magic, just commercial insight applied at the moment of a crisis. Instead of hiring another advisor, can we take this work on and streamline it? Had they gone ahead and hired the other advisor, I actually don't think they ever would have seen this insight, and they would still be at a 17% margin probably. So it's just one of those moments where you go, that decision to take on the 400K risk-only clients between the 2 of them was always available to them, but it was forced upon them. And here they are, a lot happier. I imagine they're listening to this, so you know who you are, and so happy for you. The second example of a crisis happened quite recently. It's a new client for us, and they lost a whale client. So their biggest client, the client paid $1 million. I thought it was $800,000 when they lost it, but they did some digging, and the last financial year that client had paid them $1 million. So they were completely devastated, and it was an emotional thing as well because they'd looked after this client for 20 years, and the client absolutely had grown year on year. It's a listed business. But when we paused and wanted to assess, well, what is the damage here? What is the crisis? What decisions do we need to make given this change? That was actually the most devastating part, because we realized that that client essentially had been subsidized by the owner's life for 20 years. So she hadn't been taking holidays. She had her laptop at every school occasion. She was always on call. And, essentially that client hadn't really been paying sufficiently to cover the fact that 20 years of her life had been poured into it. So losing the whale forced some insight, forced some pricing decisions on other clients that should have happened 6-7 years earlier. So the owner got her life back. And she's literally overseas right now for 6 weeks with no laptop. And that was just that commercial insight forced upon them. You've lost $1 million of revenue, a third of your business. What can you learn? What actions can you take? What needs to happen right now that is urgent? And I think, the theme here was that not all revenue is created equal. Not all clients deserve to stay. Not all parts of your business are pulling their weight. So we are always quite wary of whale clients, I'll be honest. But they're very hard to price and service, and obviously they cause a risk. So we kind of think that one of our coaches says, sort of says, if you don't consciously consider profit contributions, whole parts of your business can quietly subsidize everything else. So like high performers are subsidizing your low performers. Profitable divisions subsidizing unprofitable divisions. Your best clients are subsidizing your tail. And it's all hidden in plain sight, but we often don't look or have the time to look or feel like there's value in digging. That meme of the dog sitting in the burning room that I think is supposed to be hell, and it's like, this is fine. We sort of see that quite often in businesses, like the guy running at a 4.8% EBIT for 20 years, this is fine, where commercial insight is like suddenly there's an exit sign and you can actually just leave the burning room and make different decisions. So I think there's a bit of a theme in what I see when this happens, when we just realize like that one thing, which I said earlier, is we can be too close to our own business to kind of see it. So, the Taylor Swift story, the risk advisor leaving, the whale client leaving, like they were all sort of forced upon them. Those decisions came from outside of the bubble. So I've got 3 questions that you can ask yourself to maybe reveal some possible upside or decisions in your own world. So I want you to sort of apply these to your firm right now. I want you to think about, where is the money actually made? So break revenue down by client size, service line, divisions. Do it until the pattern slaps you in the face. Okay, so just keep going until the pattern slaps you in the face. One of the smartest guys I know, I told him to do this Pareto analysis, do the 80-20 on your own client. And he said, oh, listen, we definitely don't have that issue. I'm like, humor me. Just ask someone in your business to do it. And it wasn't until like 9 months later, he came to me and he's like, check this graph. And it was those pie charts. It was like the perfect Pareto analysis where 20% of his clients were delivering 80% of his profit. And he was adamant that that was not happening in his business. They'd been chopping the tail and repricing really consistently. No, you just have to look. So do it until it slaps you in the face. Question number 2, who? So question number 1, by the way, where is the money actually made? Question number 2, who or what is being subsidized and by whom? So what clients are subsidizing what other clients, what team members, what divisions, what entire service lines? Find it. So you might know, but it also might surprise you. So we have seen people kind of forget that they have this 120K of audit fees. And when we do the digging, you go, you've got 1.8 head count devoted to 120Ks of audit fees. Like, how do you allow that to happen? The same, we've had one with the salary packaging business. Oh, it's just a small part of our business. It's like, yeah. So you never think about it. It's a wholly unprofitable division that you are carrying for no commercial reason. So what is being subsidized is the second question. The third question is, if we were optimizing your business only for profit and impact, what would we stop doing? So take all the emotion out of it, all the legacy out of it. I think anyone listening to this in a small town will tell me she doesn't know small towns. I had one of our clients say to me recently that if he chopped the tail, he's pretty sure the fire department wouldn't come and put his house out because it's, a town of 1,000 people. So if we optimize only for profit and impact, take all emotion out of it, what would we stop doing? It might be that you have this long tail of clients. It might be that you have low margin divisions. You could be over engineering services. I would say most of the people listening to this are. If you have a team, particularly if you have long-term team members, you might have accidentally designed roles around people rather than around needs. In fact, you might have designed roles around the wrong people, like the squeaky wheels in your team, just to keep them happy. I also see things like legacy promises that no one remembers making. And you can hear that when you hear, oh, that's just the way we've always done it. Or, you know, the partner, Kevin, who left in 1999, said that was important. We don't know why. We've never stopped to ask. So what we see here at Slipstream is quite a lot of firms are one decision away from doubling their margin. But you don't get to make that decision if you don't have that commercial insight. So take the time, dig through the numbers until the patterns slap you in the face. And then those decisions will become much clearer. So even though Slipstream's been around for 10 years, stories like this cross my desk weekly. I love this work more and more with every passing year, and part of the reason this show exists is so that I can bring these stories to you in case they apply to your business or potentially your clients' businesses. Some of you I know listening today will be on the other side of the transformation that I've been privileged to see. So I know that you're nodding along thinking, yep, that was me. And I have so many names in my head that I would like to call out that I know will listen to this going, yep, that was me. I'm on the other side of that transformation. So we've had more than 80 people tell us that engaging Slipstream changed their life forever. And for many of them, the turning point wasn't like this long-term grind. It was a moment of commercial insight. So a moment where like new understanding of their numbers allowed them to make a better decision. And as a result, they built this better business and better life, but it could actually be chunked down to a moment. So one good decision can actually change everything. If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow or subscribe, and I shall make some more. Until next time.